of you who don't know me and don't know my story, it may seem a little bit different from your story in a way that you may not relate to some of the things I'm about to say. But just hang with me, just like I had to learn when I first came in these rooms, that all addiction shares one common chemical bond. Anybody know what that chemical is? Yes, dopamine. Well, I'm going to introduce you about 5 of dopamine's cousins tonight that have to deal with sex and sex addiction and pornography and all that goes along with it. See, I wish when I was 13 or 14, somebody told me that this was going to be a lifelong struggle from something that I accidentally saw in all places, a dentist's office on the wall. And that started my journey and my career, you might say, in going to gas station stores where they had the gallery, and I'm dating myself now. Playboys was first. You know, a couple of guys brought them to school. We thought that was pretty cool. You know, we're grown up. We can handle this. You know, hide it under my bed. You know, get caught by my mom in the bathroom. Yeah, that was an interesting discussion. Well, it wasn't really a discussion. I was probably about 14 or 15 at the time. I'm just giving you a little snippet. And what I want you to get out of it, if you don't get anything else out of tonight, is that, as a young lady back there said, dopamine is the main driving force in addiction. Okay? Whether it's food, whether it's gambling, whether it's sex, whether it's whatever drug. In fact, I have a quote here. Let me see if I can find it. There's a quote about pornography. Thought I wrote it down here. How I liked how this guy put it, that it was a drug. And you'll see why he says that. I'll find it here in a second. But that's primarily what I'm going to be talking about tonight. But you'll see how it relates to any other type of addiction. And I would venture to say that anybody who is in any addiction will have more than likely more than one that they're dealing with. It could be pornography and alcohol. It could be alcohol and drugs. It could be obsessive compulsive disorders. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not pretending to be one. Everything that I am going to talk about, I have read or researched online. I've got a binder. I've been doing this for about 12 years now. It's taken me 12 years to get to this point. And that's nothing about me. It's just the goodness of God and the grace of God. Where did I put that? I thought it was a pretty interesting quote, but I just can't find it right now. So anyhow, I'll just continue on. So let me tell you real quick here. So my story starts, like I said, when I was about 14. As you can tell from my accent, I didn't grow up here. Grew up in the Caribbean. We didn't have access to all the porn and stuff you guys have here. To get any kind of what we call dirty magazines, I had to go to an older friend of mine who was in college. He knew a guy who knew a guy in the capital city. I give him my 40 bucks. This might sound familiar. He goes, he meets the guy. He brings me back my magazines. I hide my magazines. I show it to my friends. That continued until I left Trinidad at age 16. And I get into the Big Apple, New York City. And I look around and I see peep shows and X-rated movies. And I was like, man, I got to go check this out. So I start checking them out, but I'd have to run and hide to go to them because I want my family to know what I was doing. And that continued through my young adult life, all the way into my married life. I'm gonna stop right here and tell you that if you're using this stuff, stop. It's the opposite of what I said in the beginning. It will destroy your sex life, and you'll see that, especially guys. Okay, I want to bring that out here in a little bit. Hugh Hefner, everybody knows who he is, the guy who invented Playboy. He said, "Sex is a driving force on the planet. We should embrace it and not see it as the enemy." True or false statement? True. Why is it true? Yes. Why is it true, sir?
Sex sells.
Sex sells. Okay, that is true. Yes.
But God said in the Bible for them to be fruitful and multiply.
Okay.
To multiply.
Okay. Will you finish? Because you still had your hand up. Okay, have some sex. I'm glad you brought God into it because God is the one who invented it. And see, we have gone off the rails. Yes, sir.
It's a must, no matter what. So,
It's a what?
must. No can live without the human species.
Okay. So I'm gonna tell you, it's true and false at the same time. Okay. We must embrace it, but we have to embrace it within the confines of how God designed it. Okay, and that's something that our parents never did for us. My mom, my dad never talked to me about it. My mom threw a book at me when I was 16 and said, the book said, "I'm becoming a man." It's like, what's this? I don't even like to read. So everything I learned about sex, I learned from my buddies, which was the worst place to get that information from. Okay. It was designed for marriage, but here's where the church has gone off the rails. They have told young people that sex is dirty, don't do it until you get married, right? Okay, I agree with part of that. Don't do it till they get married. But then when they get married, they say, okay, now you can open it up. Well, they have repressed, especially for women, they have repressed these feelings, and now they can't, in a healthy way, have sex with their husbands. So women also turn to pornography, by the way, and for stimulation. The stimulation is not as strong as with men, but it is there. Okay. There's all kinds of passages in the Bible that talk about how the marriage bed is to be kept pure, but adulterers and whoremongers God will judge. That's not there to condemn us. It's there to tell us that there's a standard of behavior. Yes. Adulterers, people who have sex with.
I have one of those, but the other way.
Whoremongers. People who are whoring around. in plain English. Sometimes the Bible uses words that we don't use anymore. So here's the thing, okay? Got to a point where I realized that it was affecting my relationship with God. And that's when I knew there was a problem. I suspected there was a problem, but here's the problem with the problem. I went to a person about 12, probably about 15 or 20 years ago in the church I was going to, not here. It was in another city. And I said, hey, man, I'm watching this stuff a lot. I think I'm getting hooked. I didn't even know anything about addiction. And you know what he told me? He said, oh, that's normal. All guys do that. Well, that's not the best advice. That's like giving, morphine to someone who is addicted to, hard drugs. Just use this, just substitute. So I did that for a while. I substituted X-rated for R-rated with the same kind of scenery, just you didn't see everything. I tried to manage it myself. And then when I got here to Cedar Hill, that's a long story, but through a series of events that God orchestrated, I found Overcomers. And one of the things I found about Overcomers was They weren't talking about sex. So I kept asking my friend here, Ricky, my brother, hey man, they're not talking about what I'm doing. I don't think this is for me. How many of you relate? They may not be talking about gambling. They may not be talking about overeating, you know, but it's all the same. Dopamine is the base chemical in the brain. And God designed our brain, in the case of sexuality, for a very specific purpose. And I'm going to get to that here in a second. No, I'm going to do it now. There's about 6 chemicals in your brain when you have sex or when you masturbate or when you do anything sexually. Yes, I said that word in the church because we have to be real, because our kids are seeing this at age 8. So if you have grandkids from 8 to 14 and they're not even looking for it. 94% of the time they get into it, it's accidental. And then the young brain, the chemical neurons haven't formed yet. They are hooked right away. It's like giving, okay, let me give you an example that you all might relate to. Anybody ever heard the name Len Bias? Played for the Celtics back in the day. Got a big contract, went out and celebrated with Coke. What happened to Len Bias? Died first time. Okay, that's what's happening to our young people. Okay, we are getting them hooked at an early age. Dopamine, here's what dopamine does. It's actually a good chemical. It focuses attention on the task at hand. So if you're trying to prepare, like go over your notes, like I was doing while you guys was eating, dopamine helps me to concentrate and focus in on that. If I'm going to take a hit or something, dopamine helps me to concentrate and focus on that. The place could be on fire, okay? You know, when I was in my addiction, I could be sitting in the room and there could be pandemonium going on outside, you know, everything. People could be shooting or whatever. I'm going to stay here until I'm finished, okay? You might be able to relate to that. It makes you feel good. There's something called the reward circuitry in our brain. When we do something that we enjoy, whether it's a nice movie, taking a trip, you might have gone to a scenic place, you dive in and you're watching the fishes. That's dopamine that's working. It helps to cement that memory, that's a pleasant memory. And what it does is allow us to go back to that memory in the future. But it also fuels attention, a craving, okay? Now there's a Bible verse in Ephesians 4:18 and 19. It says that it was talking about people who got into addiction, and it says they had a continual lust for more and more of the same. That's Bible. I'm telling you the chemical reason for it. It's dopamine. That's one of the chemicals that causes that lust, okay? And it makes it helps the brain remember what is interesting and how to respond to. So for me, whenever I saw a sexually stimulating image, I still have to watch what I watched. Okay? I mean, even more so in recovery, because it could be it could be right here in this room. Okay? If I focus on the wrong thing, my brain is going to go back and remember all the images. They don't go away. They're stored there. They're cemented in the brain, which is a dangerous thing for young brains because they haven't developed yet. Then there's testosterone. Now, let me ask you a crazy question. Is testosterone only a hormone for men? Okay. Do women have testosterone? Yeah. Say that again.
Very so much.
Not so much. Okay.
Very so much. They have a lot.
Yes. Yeah, I think I understand what I'm hearing. Well, no, all of you ladies have testosterone, okay? Just a little bit, okay? Because it helps to do the things on the positive side when we have intimacy, okay? It creates sexual arousal and desire. There's a guy by the name of Mark Kassenberg who calls it the drug of the new millennium. And he wrote a book called The Brain Science Behind Internet Pornography Use. Pornography rewires our brain in a damaging way. But I got good news. The brain is what neuroscientists call aplastic, meaning that plastic bends. if you put good stuff back in,
Come
here's
on.
where the Bible comes in. Philippians says to focus on what's good, what's honest, what's pure, what's lovely, what's above reproach. Okay? If you focus on those things, this guy in this book, he's a scientist, but he says you can recreate how that landscape in the brain is used by putting good stuff in. Okay? It's kind of like going to change your oil. You don't put new oil until you take the old oil out of your car. If you do, you're wasting your money, first of all, but it's not doing you any good. Same thing here. We have to clean up the landscape. There's another Bible verse that says something like, when the demons were driven out of the house, this is a recovery message now, in case you hadn't caught it, and the owner doesn't put anything good in there and he just leaves the house empty. What happens, Bible students, with that house?
Come back, 10 more.
10 more. Yeah, tenfold. So sevenfold, sorry. Yeah, seven. You're right. Getting mixed up here in my numbers. Thank you. So he brings 7 more evil spirits. This is why we have problems so much when we go back to doing the same behavior. Each time we go back to it, the demons are coming back in force, which is why we have to be at these meetings, which is why we need to, call a sponsor. I was with a young lady tonight on the way here. I was impressed. Calling her sponsor to say, hey, don't think that I'm not coming. I'm just falling away. I'm going to a different group tonight. But when is the next meeting? It took me a long time to get to that point. Okay, I'm just going to tell you, it took me a long time to get to the point where I felt like maybe I need to start listening. But here's the thing. It's insanity to keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. I looked at my sponsor and I looked at his life and I wanted that, but I wasn't doing what he was doing. So, I mean, I'm a little hard-headed, but after that, you hit your head that many times, you start thinking, oh, maybe there's something to what he's saying. So, and it wasn't, let me give you some hope. It wasn't a light bulb moment. It was gradual. I started doing a little bit more. I'll have a little relapse. I'll come back. And you know what? Just like God, he never said, hey, you're stupid. You shouldn't have done that. It's like, okay, tell me what was going on in your life when that happened and what did you learn from it? Because there's always the message, I did remember this one, what I heard today by a preacher. He said, he was talking about David and how King David, people say, how could God say he's a man after his own heart? And David committed adultery and David did a lot of things. But here's the thing about David. David had a heart to want to do right. And that's what God uses. He doesn't judge us by our worst actions that we've committed. Okay? That's what Jesus came for. And this guy kind of made a funny about it. He says, if we don't use wisdom and do stupid stuff, God is so big that he can use and will use the stupid for his purpose. In the case of David, he is mentioned, I believe I saw in my reading over 1,000 times in the Bible. The guy who did all these things, okay? God has turned it around to use for his purposes. In fact, there's a verse that says he can make all things work for good. Doesn't mean that they're good when we see something bad happen, but he's going to turn that around because he's God, and he can make it work out where there's going to be some good about it. So one of the things we have to ask ourselves, I'm going off topic for a reason. When we're going through difficulty, God, what are you trying to show me in this? Because there's obviously a lesson here that I'm not seeing. Okay, back in orange. The brain, when porn and mental fantasizing crafts a brain that is constantly generating testosterone. In fact, the testosterone goes into overdrive. And so does the dopamine. So what does the brain do? Anybody know what the check valve is? I know Jimmy does, he's a plumber. Check valve is to let water go in one direction only. The brain shuts off the ability to the receptors to pick up dopamine because it's a dopamine overload. While the testosterone, it's fat soluble, it's not dissipated or released very quickly. So it probably takes about 90 days for you to get it out of your body if you've been using this stuff, watching this stuff all the time. And what that does is it creates a brain that's ready to interpret even the most innocent sexual cue as something that that needs a response sexually. However that comes about. This is why you see people out there that rape 80-year-old women. Okay? I guarantee you it's because of a long history of porn use. Okay, the brain is chemically imbalanced at this point. Another thing that happens is the frontal part of the brain teaches us how to control impulses. As you use more porn, those impulses go down, control go down. So I know two guys that I worked with, one did 5 years in federal prison because impulse control was not there. And he gravitated to more extreme forms of porn where he went on a website that the FBI was monitoring and he got picked up for child pornography. Okay. It can happen and it's all chemically based. Because testosterone is slow to dissipate, I already said that. They pick up sexual fantasies from everyday occurrences. Okay, the other chemical is norepinephrine. What do you know about epinephrine? Anybody remember this from high school science? Have you ever heard the terms fight or flight?
Yes.
That's what epinephrine does. If somebody was to come in here pointing a gun, our brain will automatically go into fight or flight. You go either freeze or you're gonna run like, I almost said a bad word, out the door. Right? That's fight or flight. Well, it also plays a part in sexual arousal, okay, and sexual memory. It helps the brain emotionally, it helps burn those emotional experiences in our brain, okay, good or bad, whether it's with a spouse that you love and cherish or internet porn, okay? Then there's oxytocin. Before I go on, epinephrine helps that information to be stored for easy recall. I can tell you now, if I really gave myself the memories of things that I have seen 20 years ago. And you wonder, how is that possible? Because it's burned into the brain. Now I've allowed my brain to recalibrate by putting good stuff in and by sharing what I'm talking about. Oxytocin, it's a bonding hormone, okay? Oxytocin is released when a mother and a baby cuddle. It's bonding. The baby feels it, somehow it's get across to them. When couples bond, okay? This is why a kiss is so powerful. When you kiss someone, you're releasing oxytocin, okay? It's also released during orgasm. And you can see how that can help bond it to whatever the thing is causing the orgasm, okay? I wanna move on here. Vasopressin is the last one I think I'm gonna talk about. It works along with oxytocin and it encourages the feeling of bondness. It's released slowly during sexual intercourse, but also all the way up to orgasm. So we can see how these chemicals in conjunction with each other will allow us to have this euphoric feeling. There's another one I didn't have time to write down. that also is released at orgasm. Serotonin, thank you. So the point is not to remember all of these or any of these. The point is God designed these chemicals to work in a certain way for a certain purpose. And when we watch things like internet porn, we are short-circuiting our brain. The brain of a habitual porn user, this is not my research, this is neuroscientists, is no different from the brain of an alcoholic or crack addict. When they take scans of the brain, those same areas, those same pleasure areas light up. And after 60 or 90 days, when they do the same scans, those areas are decreased in intensity. This is why coming here is not necessarily to stop, to find how to live successfully what it is you're struggling with, but it's to find a better way to live. Because we weren't designed to be in bondage. Paul says that all things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient. Okay? I made a challenge to you, and I'm glad my wife is not here because she'll be blushing for what I'm about to say. So don't tell her I said it. If you want to enjoy sex the way God intended, stay away from this stuff. I can tell you my sexual life right now, without embarrassment, is 1,000 times better because it's done in purity. In the purity is what I'm trying to say of how God says it. And I also heard a minister say, before you have sex with your spouse, I'm talking about people who are married now. Don't get twisted. You should pray. You should pray that your mind is clear from any outside interference so that you can give yourself. Because sex is not just a physical act, unlike what the world tells us. It's spiritual, okay? The Bible says two become one. This is why when mostly women, for example, when they have a breakup, they take it so hard because a piece of them is broken away, of their core, of their inner being. When a woman gives herself to you, it's more than a physical act, okay? So guys, we have to cherish that sacredness and not go with the culture and think that we could just sleep with as many people as we want. Because those who do that do not have a satisfying married life when they do settle down. Okay? There's all kinds of statistics on that. But here's some statistics that may shock you. It's viewed by 2 million people every minute. Pornography online generates more income than Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, CBS, ABC, NBC combined. Combined. Anybody want to take a guess at what that number would be in the billions? Did I hear 12?
She said trillions.
Well, it's not trillions yet, but it's in the billions of dollars. How about $97 billion a year? Here's a frightening statistic that we really should be talking about this more in church. 56% of divorces involve pornography use. Why is that, guys? Why is that, class? Okay, that's true. But let's go deeper. From everything that I've just said, what have you gleaned that this could cause that, a divorce? Boredom, what's it?
Sex sells. It's everywhere.
Okay,
Addiction.
okay. Y'all getting warm? The question is, why is 56% of divorces have pornography as a factor in that divorce?
They're very expensive.
They're looking outside their marriage, you're all getting warmer and warmer. Carla,
Because you can't find what you desire, you know what I mean?
now we're hitting the nail on the head. Yes, sir.
You're looking at like maybe a woman that's not like your wife, like.
Okay, getting warmer. Here's the problem.
Specific.
Self-centered pride.
What?
Self-centered pride.
Yes, but here's the deal, guys. And we are objectifying women when we watch this stuff, okay? And we're contributing to, um, what's the stuff when they take people from countries and they bring them here? Sex trafficking, thank you. You guys are on the ball tonight. So we're contributing, there's a book out there that I have in my library that I got from my minister called Not for Sale. Every time we watch a movie, do you know that most of that money is either going to organized crime or that funnels these, well, let me put it in everyday language. You all probably heard this name, Epstein.
Yeah.
Okay. Enough said. Epstein is a guy who he had a woman who was his partner that would organize these sex parties with underage girls. There's another one right now in jail. Yeah. Okay. So what's the end result of this? We're either gonna get killed, we're gonna get some disease, or we're gonna go to jail. Like I said, the guy I worked with, 16 years as a police officer, lost his retirement, lost everything, because this is so addictive. It's more powerful than any drug out there. And you lose all ability, if you do it long enough, to have self-control, which is kind of an oxymoron, okay? The only control we have is what God gives us, you know. So 56% of divorces, 90% of children are exposed to it from age 8 to 14. Here's a really sickening statistic. Child pornography generates $3 billion a year from over 100,000 illegal websites. Here's the quote I was looking for. I couldn't even read my own notes. Imagine that. Porn is a lie, a drug, a destroyer. Say that again. Porn is a lie, a drug, a destroyer. It is a fictitious representation of intimacy. The reason why there's divorces with porn is because we have this image, I'm talking about men now, of this perfect woman. In fact, some of us go and buy these animatronic dolls. That's a big word for saying a doll that looks like a human being and it's so lifelike, it's very, very expensive. And that's their wife, okay? But here's two things I'm gonna give you as far why that's a problem with marriages. When I was in my addiction, actively, I didn't see the person I was with, my wife. I had my own image in my mind. And the more you do that, the more separated you become from the person you're supposed to love. That person is being hurt, just like a codependent spouse, okay? Eventually, I can give you some statistics, but because of confidentiality, I'm not gonna go that way. But I can just tell you that what I just said about 56%, I know of cases right now that is a factor in those breakup of those homes. So this is a serious problem, whether you're 25 or 55, this is the devil's lie. It's a false intimacy. In fact, if you really get down to it, as far as the Bible says, it is idolatry. It's putting something instead of in front of God. And I did that for years and years. And you know what I told myself? I can handle this. I'm sure you've told yourself that on something else. You know, I'm only going to drink a little bit. Well, a little bit gets a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And before you know it, you know, it's something that's, what did Paul say? I am a slave to it. Folks, I used to wait for cherish Friday afternoons after work. Because I went down to you had to go to the video stores at those days, and I'll get me 4 or 5 or 6 videos, you know, to watch. And then I got one of my partners to, you know, help me. Because I was gonna have a partner. pick out the best ones. If I had time tonight, I would share, I won't give you his name, and you can look it up. This guy was the #1 adult film star. His name is Joshua Broome, Broome. He is now a Christian minister, and I heard a podcast where he talked to Ed Young at Fellowship Church in Grapevine, and they taped it. So it's on YouTube if you want to look it up. And that's where I got all these statistics from. I didn't just make them up. This guy was in the industry. And what he says was, when he talks about a fictitious representation, everybody in there is doing something to enhance themselves, to make them be able to do all those scenes. The guys are using erectile dysfunction drugs, even though they don't have erectile dysfunction. The girls are using other drugs. He said that there's like 4 lights in the room and all kinds of makeup, things to make them look, more impossible than you can ever find anybody else out there. It's kind of like looking at Vogue magazine or something and you see a picture of a bottle. If that's your impression of what you're looking for, good luck. Because if you find it, it's not going to stay that way. And that's why these Hollywood types are married 4 or 5 times. I was listening to something about Johnny Carson. He says he loved being married, but he couldn't stay married. So anyhow, I have more information, but I want to leave time for some questions. One I got from an organization called Covenant Eyes. If you have an issue with this, or you think you might, go to covenanteyes.com. Yes, they will give you some information on filtering for your computer. Because folks, we are not smarter than the devil. He knows our number and he is going to tempt us. Even something as simple as innocent as Instagram. How many of you have that and notice when you're looking for something totally wholesome, other things pop up on that first page? Now you have a choice at that point. You can either ignore it, or you can say, well, I wonder what's really going on here. That's a satanic trap. Don't ever go down that road. Okay, so on Covenant Eyes, 13 ways porn will ruin your life before you even realize it. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I will say that it's a big problem. It's a problem in the church. It's the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. Okay, but I intend to break that mold of that elephant, because every time I have spoken, whether it's here or at a seminar, I've had people come up to me afterwards and say, both men and women, asking for more information. And information is fine, but if you're not going to follow it, it doesn't do you any good. Because to know and not to do is to yet not know. Right? So with that, we got some time here.